Hello, this is Fear Dragon coming at you with another StarCraft 2 netcast. Today we have game number 2 between mTwDimaga and SlayerSCella. If you have not seen game number 1, go back and go watch it. It was a pretty exciting game, but in the meanwhile, let's go ahead and jump into game number 2 and introduce these players, as well as reveal the score. 3, 2, 1. Alright, let's go. Top left-hand corner of Ohana, we have the blue Zerg player, the Foreigner, currently down 0-1, but it has a good opportunity to make a comeback in this game. Let's see if he can do it. He is representing Team mTW. His name is mTwDimaga. And I know that normally you just call Shut the Manor Bear, but whatever, dude. Dimaga's pretty awesome. But his opponent, also pretty awesome himself, known as a troll, and also one of the big representatives and I guess team organizer. I'm actually not sure exactly what his title is, but a very important person at Team Slayers. Spawning in the bottom right hand corner of Ohana as the red Protoss player. Let's see if he can close this series out. He is currently up 1-0 in this best of 5 series. His name is SlayerSCella. SlayerSCella going for that one gate Stargate, kind of adding on a couple more gateways and just doing some nice aggression. Kind of ended up expanding into his third, around the 12-minute mark, which is a little, it's kind of late-ish for a Protoss player, but he definitely followed it up very nicely by taking that fourth expansion, defending against Dimaga's big Baneling aggression, and right before all of that aggression, basically, what SlayerSCella ended up doing was he did this fabulous Warp Prism play and basically Warp Prismed into Dimaga's main and had a bunch of units there, caused a whole lot of havoc, delayed Dimaga's push by quite a substantial amount of time, and allowed him to get that, or use that time to build up the defenses he would need to basically crush Dimaga's big Baneling aggression with those Baneling drops and everything. We're going to have to see whether or not these players decide to go for very similar builds. I think that both of their builds will be relatively viable on this map, I suppose. Although it's a little bit harder to make that call about Dimaga, since, Dimaga is a little bit more well known for his unorthodox play. Generally, you don't really see a lot of Baneling aggression or Baneling plays in a Zerg versus Protoss, but hell, with Dimaga, you never know. I really haven't quite figured out a big pattern on his style of play and when he goes for what, but we'll end up seeing whether he does that. It looks like for now he's going for a very similar build, so we do see those standard 4 Zerglings as well as that hatchery, that third hatchery down at the 4-minute mark. And meanwhile, it looks like SlayerSCella looking to have a pretty similar build as well. Does just now have that gateway finishing up, is going to be throwing down that cybernetic core, pretty normal. And already has these 2 gas guys, so he could actually be very much well prepared to go for that exact same build. We could see him throwing down a Stargate at some point in the near future. Might want to be a little bit careful about the placement, but actually, on second thought, it probably won't matter too much, as you could even see how effective that little harassment was in that last game, where he did some nice little damage with that 1 Void Ray and those 4 Phoenix, even though his Void Ray was basically immediately revealed to kill off that 1 Overlord over at his natural. Actually, interesting, this Overlord is pretty ballsy, as that cybernetic core is now finished, and we do see the Stalker coming out, so he's definitely going to be able to get a good chance to kill off that Overlord. With the Overlord not really seeing a whole lot, the main thing that he will be seeing will be whether or not these 2 gas guys are being taken. It looks like now he realizes a little bit late. I think this is actually going to be very close to see whether or not this Overlord actually managed to survive. And you might be thinking it's not a big deal, but hey, it is actually a pretty big deal that will actually supply block Dimaga, as well as kind of prevent him from being able to easily scout out these 2 gas guys. But a little bit of miss micro from that Stalker. Does pull back a little bit too early, but anyways, we do see a very different build coming out of SlayerSCella. We do see that robotics facility coming down instead, but now we also see that those 2 gas guys are being thrown down. He's going to be gearing up to probably go for some kind of 5-gate robo build. Maybe potentially going to 6-gate. Definitely going to be getting out an Immortal or so, I would at least expect. But we're going to end up seeing how he decides to follow this up. I feel like if he did not actually end up getting both of these Gassers, maybe if he got just one of them or something, he could be potentially going for a very key timing push with a Warp Prism, kind of do that annoying force field on the ramp that everyone knows about. But we do see just an Observer popping out immediately, so not going to be looking to be rushing for any of that kind of play. We might see some nice Warp Prism play in the late game as we saw in the last game. But in the meanwhile, both these players are pretty content, just play out that good old macro game. Let's go ahead and take a look, speaking of macro, what their worker counts are at. It looks like Dimaga, there it is, that huge swarm of drones actually popping another like 6 or so. Getting up to 54 drones, going to be feeling pretty comfortable after he gets, you know, another 10 or 15 more. But in the meanwhile, we do see that he is making a couple of units, and this is very important, not only just for knocking down these destructible rocks, but just for having a couple ready and waiting for any kind of defense. Let's go ahead and see. He actually has not started lair tag just until now, so it's going to be a very late lair tag. We're going to have to see whether or not he's going to be able to defend against any kind of aggression that SlayerSCella is going to be looking to do. As I said, that 5-gate or robotic facility play, no, it looks like actually going to be going up to 6 gateways. And now you can definitely support this off 6 gateways, but it makes it a little bit harder to expand your third when you go for 6 gateways versus 5, as just warping in that additional unit every single round, it just kind of cuts into that cost. So we're going to have to see, you know, SlayerSCella do a little bit more of an aggressive play. Now he does have quite a few sentries, so he will be relatively prepared if he has the good reaction time that I'm sure he does to force field against those Zerglings. We do know that there is in fact no Roach Warren down, and neither is there any lair tech finished just quite yet. We do see a macro hatchery going down. He does see that this big force is pushing out across the map, and that Baneling nest that we saw in the last game is going to be completing once again in this game relatively soon. We're going to have to see how much damage SlayerSCella is able to do. We do see, oh my god, these two Immortals a little bit out of position. Those Zerglings getting some nice little hits off on those that one Immortal as well as those sentries, but not really being able to pick off any of those units. Now we see SlayerSCella taking a bit of a roundabout path that's definitely going to pay off. At least it looks like it might. Ooh, I'm not actually sure how much I like this decision to knock down these destructible rocks. I feel like that's actually just going to help out Dimaga more than anything else, as it's just going to open up that attack path for those Zerglings. But we do see those destructible rocks do get knocked down. That is going to allow him to easily move a little bit further down. We're going to have to see how this goes. And we do see a Warp Prism out actually. So that's going to make it very easy to reinforce with any kind of aggression that he does end up doing. These Spine Call is actually a little bit out of position for the angle that SlayerSCella is moving into. And now the Banelings are going to be coming out. And where are the Force Shields? The Force Shields just narrowly being able to defend against all those Banelings. And oh my god, the Force Shields are beautiful, I have to say, as it shields off against every single Baneling hit except for maybe one. And now we do see that those Banelings are still alive, though. They're going to be coming in for round number 2. How many Force Shields are left? It looks like a couple of Force Shields do go up, and only a couple of those Zealots do end up being taken out. But now we do see the Zerglings starting to do some good damage. The Warp Prism continue to warp in, though, so it's going to be very difficult for Dimaga to defend now with this huge army. Still the Immortals left alive. Look at this Immortal, 18 kills with that +1 and 12 on this one. This is going to be very, very scary. And now it looks like this third is going to most likely go down. I'm not sure if Dimaga is actually going to be able to do anything to defend this. No, it doesn't look like he will be, but he is morphing in a huge swarm of these Banelings. Now, even though he's taken a lot of damage, if he can somehow manage to clean up this army, I think he still has a good chance in this game. As we can see, SlayerSCella has really not transitioned too much out of this. He has thrown down the robotics phase, but he can still make a comeback in this game. We'll have to wait and see. We do see that he is starting to gear up, just making a couple more of those Banelings. Now, one thing that SlayerSCella can do is he can lift up these sentries in the case that he realizes his army is going to be completely cleaned up. At least save those gas-intensive units, and maybe at least save those Immortals. Actually, a nice play from Dimaga, kind of baiting out those Force Shields. We do see, oh no! A couple of those Banelings going in by themselves, not really entirely worth it. And now, look at this beautiful positioning from SlayerSCella, as he can just kind of try to move a couple of these units up the ramp. And meanwhile, he has supporting fire from the lower ground. And now we also see that Warp Prism is ready to warp in a couple more units. He can actually even position a little bit further out. Oh my god! SlayerSCella with these amazing reaction times with those Force Shields, with waiting until the very last second to make sure that those Force Shields aren't just baited out, and actually just stopping those Banelings from being able to do any kind of really big damage. But again, I was saying, if he moves over this Warp Prism just slightly, he could actually warp in a little bit on the high ground. But no, looks like he's actually going to feel pretty content with how many units he's killed. The fact that he's already killed off that third and forced Dimaga to continue to produce units, with that fear that SlayerSCella is just going to move straight back over into his natural expansion. But SlayerSCella, taking advantage of the fact that that was the case, is just going to go ahead and retreat now. It looks like a little bit of an accidental load up, but now he is going to go safely, try and retreat a little bit. Meanwhile, we do see that Dimaga is going to try and take a third at a different location. He knows he's falling quite a bit far behind now, and he is also actually going to be taking this over here, so it's going to be like a fourth and a third at the same time. But now he does have that layer tech finished up. We're going to have to see what he decides to do with it. I'm not sure if he's going to have the economy to afford anything with it right now, though. But we do see over here, he did end up losing quite a few of those drones. Let's go ahead and take a look. Actually, not a huge number, not as large as I initially thought. But 10 drones, still a bit of a hit, especially considering he lost that third expansion. So he's going to have to make that decision. Do I make drones or do I make additional units to defend against the incoming impending push battle? Oh my god! Wow, a fabulous play from SlayerSCella, knocking out so many of those banelings with that War Prism drop right on top of them. Looks like it did not end up working out quite as well as Dimaga might have hoped. But yeah, anyways, I was saying that, you know, Dimaga is going to have to make that decision. Do I make units or do I make drones right now? As, you know, my opponent can pretty much push it out with this huge army that he knows his opponent has. Or his opponent could just be kind of playing that macro game, in which case Dimaga wants to play, you know, catch up in that economy. So he's going to have to kind of make a little bit of a coin flip, I'd have to say. I'm kind of hesitant to use that term, but in this situation, he's a little bit in a precarious situation. We do see this nice little Zergling. He's going to be trying to get a little bit of scouting information off. Does not quite see too much, but actually that Overlord over here from the very early game, we were talking about when that Stalker kind of missed micro, did not end up killing it. You could actually scout in and see what the unit composition of SlayerSCella looks like at any time. But probably just going to do that with a Zergling. Actually, wow. Oh, actually over here, I thought for a second that Dimaga taking a very fast 6th expansion, try and play catch up, but no, just chasing after that War Prism, making sure, hey, you cannot do any more damage. I have had enough out of you. But we do see that Spire coming out, so once that Spire pops out, if there is no Gravatic Drive, and I'm pretty sure this time, I'm definite, this War Prism is moving pretty slow, so I know he got Gravatic Drive in that last game. But you know, if SlayerSCella does not get that Gravatic Drive, but once again, those Corruptors are going to be able to do a lot of damage to that War Prism if he tries to harass anymore. We do see those Queens definitely going to be able to ward it off for now. But, you know, this War Prism is going to get some nice little scouting off, and going to see that there is, in fact, this expansion over here. We can definitely see that he does not know about it before, since he can't even really see all the creep spread over there. But looks like SlayerSCella not really going to be able to do a lot of damage with this War Prism, since, you know, Dimaga's been really on top of it. But SlayerSCella moving out. We're going to see if Dimaga is going to be on top of this big army that's been pushing out. And now he does have wind of it. He's going to try and retreat with the Queens. But looks like they might actually get picked off. Meanwhile, the War Prism being utilized to warp in some reinforcing units. SlayerSCella still has about 20 or 30 more supply that he can warp in to reinforce. But now we do see mTwDimaga loading up those Overlords with those Banelings. We're going to have to see whether he can engage in this big army. But I don't think he has the Baneling count to deal with it. And now we see he's heavily actually, well, not super heavily, but still supply block and still down quite a bit of supply. Now we see these Zergans trying to get in a nice flanking position to stop to stop the Stalkers and the Immortals and everything else from running away from these Banelings that are dropping right on top of the army, and they do a pretty massive amount of damage, but there's still too many Colossus left over. There are just not any Corruptors to deal with these Colossus, even though the Zergans are doing a massive amount of damage. That engagement was about as well as Dimaga could have hoped for, but it's just not enough to clean up. He needed those Corruptors. He needed to buy just a little bit more time to take out those Colossus with those Corruptors during that engagement, so they could potentially deal a little bit more damage. And there's going to be the GG. So SlayerSCella taking this best of 5 series 2-0. Now we're going to go into game number 3. This is going to be Dimaga's last chance. He has to win 3 games in a row to take it back this series. So we're going to have to find out whether or not he's going to be able to do it. I'm definitely rooting for him, and I'm a Protoss player. So it just goes to show you how much everyone loves Dimaga, but still, SlayerSCella, a very strong player. We're seeing some great plays out of him, especially loving this underutilized Warp Prism play. We even see it underutilized by a lot of pro players, you know, just as a reinforcing unit. You know, not even if you can't do a lot of damage. We saw that War Prism flying everywhere around. And eventually he just kind of reunited with his army, use it to basically warp in a bunch of stuff over at the, I think it's actually over here, over at the 3rd expansion. And also just using it to reinforce as he moved across the map. So, Great plays from SlayerSCella. Great play from Dimaga, but Dimaga really just not able to handle those big aggression pushes coming out of SlayerSCella. We're going to have to see if he can handle it in game number 3. I'll see you guys there. Go ahead and subscribe and all that good stuff that's in the description below. See you guys there in game number